Ukraine has once again shocked the world by pulling off a strike that many believed was impossible. In just 15 minutes, a massive Russian military facility, once considered an unshakable fortress, was reduced to smoldering ruins. The event immediately became a focal point of global discussion, not only for the scale of destruction, but also for the extraordinary precision with which it was carried out. This is a story of power, speed, vulnerability, and lessons that will shape the ongoing war. The attack was not just about the destruction of buildings and vehicles. It was about shattering confidence, exposing weaknesses, and redefining the balance of the conflict. The short window in which the strike took place has left observers astonished, and the consequences of what followed are even more dramatic than the strike itself. The Russian military facility was no ordinary base. It was a large complex that served as a key logistical hub, storing ammunition, fuel, armored vehicles, and equipment necessary to sustain thousands of troops. From the outside, it appeared impenetrable. Tall concrete walls surrounded the perimeter. Checkpoints guarded every entrance, and anti-air defenses were positioned on the outer edges to deter any aerial assault. The compound contained multiple large warehouses, fuel tanks, bunkers, and even temporary housing for soldiers. To the Russian command, this facility was a symbol of strength and readiness. However, symbols can be deceiving. Beneath the solid exterior, there were flaws in planning, vulnerabilities in design, and overconfidence in security. These hidden weaknesses turned out to be exactly what Ukraine needed to exploit. The Ukrainian operation began with careful surveillance. For weeks, drones had been mapping the area, identifying blind spots in Russian defenses, and locating the most critical targets inside. Once the intelligence was complete, the strike team moved into position. In a carefully coordinated sequence, drones and long-range missiles were launched toward the facility. Within minutes, the silence of the night was broken by explosions that lit up the sky. The first wave of strikes targeted the fuel storage areas, creating fireballs that quickly spread. Secondary explosions erupted as ammunition depots ignited, and chain reactions turned small blasts into thunderous roars. The speed was breathtaking. Within 15 minutes, the facility that took years to build and secure was nothing more than a collapsing structure consumed by fire. Inside the compound, chaos reigned. Soldiers stationed there had little warning. The interior of the base was designed for storage efficiency, not safety. Ammunition was stacked near fuel. Armored vehicles were parked side by side without blast shields, and emergency bunkers were poorly placed. Once the first missile tore through a warehouse roof, flames spread uncontrollably. Soldiers scrambled to escape, but the dense smoke, falling debris, and constant secondary explosions made it nearly impossible. Eyewitness reports described the interior as a scene of confusion and panic. Within minutes, what had been a functional command hub turned into a nightmare of collapsing steel beams, exploding shells, and suffocating black smoke. In terms of performance, the Ukrainian strike was executed with near perfection. Military analysts estimate that more than 70% of the facility was destroyed. Tanks, trucks, artillery, fuel reserves, and advanced equipment were completely eliminated. The precision of the strike meant minimal waste of resources. Every missile and drone seemed to find its mark. The destruction rate was extraordinary, considering the limited time frame. Ukraine demonstrated that with the right intelligence, preparation, and technology, it is possible to dismantle even the most heavily guarded installations in record time. On the other hand, Russia's performance in defense raised serious doubts. The anti-air systems deployed around the facility either failed to detect or failed to intercept the incoming weapons. Not a single drone or missile was reported shot down. The failure was described by some experts as catastrophic, and perhaps one of the most humiliating defense collapses Russia has faced in the war. Safety measures at the facility were almost non-existent. For all its imposing appearance, the base lacked critical features that could have minimized damage. Ammunition was stored in above-ground warehouses instead of underground bunkers. Fuel depots were clustered in one section, creating the perfect conditions for chain reactions once hit. There were no reinforced shelters for troops, and emergency response protocols appeared weak or absent. In short, the safety features were poorly planned, and when tested under real conditions, they collapsed instantly. In contrast, Ukraine showcased remarkable safety planning on its side. Drones were deployed from concealed locations. Missile launchers were relocated immediately after firing to avoid detection, and operational secrecy was maintained until the very last moment. The strike ended without significant Ukrainian losses, a fact that highlights how far their planning and execution have advanced. The unique selling point of this entire event was speed and precision. Ukraine achieved in 15 minutes what conventional ground forces would have required weeks, if not months, to accomplish. The strike was not just about brute force, it was about intelligence, coordination, and flawless execution. Another unique aspect is the psychological dimension. For Russia, losing such a massive facility so quickly dealt a serious blow to morale. Soldiers and commanders alike were shaken by the realization that their defenses could not protect even their most important installations. For Ukraine, the operation became a rallying symbol of capability and resilience. It boosted morale among troops and citizens, while also reinforcing the confidence of international allies, who continued to provide advanced weaponry. The world took notice, and many analysts describe this as a turning point, not only militarily but also psychologically. The price of this attack was enormous for Russia. Financially, the losses are staggering. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment, fuel, and ammunition were destroyed in less than an hour. Tanks and vehicles, painstakingly transported and positioned, now lie in twisted ruins. Fuel reserves meant to support future operations were lost in giant fireballs. But the cost was not only financial. The human toll was equally devastating. Dozens of soldiers stationed inside the base reportedly lost their lives, while many more were injured. The tragedy exposed the negligence of Russian commanders who failed to prioritize the safety of their personnel. For Ukraine, the price was comparatively small. A limited number of drones and missiles, many of them provided by allies, were enough to inflict damage far greater than their monetary cost. It was a perfect example of asymmetric warfare, where a smaller force uses precision and intelligence to overcome a larger opponent. In the aftermath of the strike, the world watched closely to see how Russia would respond. Reports suggest that attempts at a counterstrike were clumsy and ineffective. By the time Russian forces tried to retaliate, Ukraine had already relocated its launch systems and secured its personnel. The failure to respond effectively deepened the embarrassment and highlighted once again the lack of readiness on the Russian side. Analysts describe the entire episode as a showcase of 21st century warfare. Technology, planning, and speed outweighed sheer numbers and outdated defense systems. It was a reminder that modern conflicts are not simply about who has more weapons, but about who uses them smarter and faster. Chanza uses them smarter. The destruction of this facility carries broader implications. It showed that Russia's supposed strongholds are not as secure as they appear, and it gave Ukraine a significant propaganda victory. It also raised new questions about the future of the war. If Ukraine can strike so effectively deep inside Russian-controlled areas, what other vulnerabilities remain exposed? Can Russia afford to keep building massive bases when a single precision strike can undo them in minute? And what does this mean for international support, as allies witness Ukraine's growing effectiveness with the resources they provide? These questions add layers of complexity to an already unpredictable conflict. In conclusion, the destruction of the Russian facility in just 15 minutes was more than a military success. It was a symbol of strategy triumphing over strength, intelligence overpowering arrogance, and precision reshaping the rules of war. The base, once a fortress of steel and concrete, revealed its fragile interior when tested. Ukraine's performance highlighted how determination, preparation, and technology can alter the balance, even in the most uneven wars. Russia paid a heavy price in equipment, money, and human lives. While Ukraine's cost was minimal compared to the gains achieved, the unique selling points of speed, precision, and psychological impact will be remembered long after the smoke clears. This was not merely the destruction of a building. It was the destruction of confidence. A clear message that no fortress is beyond reach. The lesson is unmistakable. In modern warfare, the side that adapts faster, strikes smarter, and protects its own while exposing the enemy's weaknesses will always hold the upper hand. The world will remember the day when a fortress crumbled in 15 minutes. And everything that followed will shape the future of this conflict.